Good evening and welcome back to Game Day, you hoops. I'm your host, Mecca Thompson. Joined with me tonight is Stone Webber, Addie Crawford, and Jimmy Wicks. Now, the Sooners fell to the Texas Longhorns Tuesday night in their Red River matchup, and it was a nail-biter. Texas led most of the first half, putting the game at 31-29 before halftime. Oklahoma shot approximately 30% from the field early on the court, making 11 of 13 free throws, which helped them stay in the game. But things heated up in the second half, with the game being tied, and Chagwal's three-pointer to win it did not make it, forcing the game to overtime, where Texas scored 5 of 7 shots, with Texas on top. Now, it was evident that the Sooners' technique towards the end of the game was not up to par. What is one aspect of the game that stuck out to you in this close overtime win?
The biggest thing for OU in these close games is to finish. That's simply it. They fought back the entire second half against Texas to get a decent to bad shot, I think, with Ethan Chagwa at the end of regulation. But in overtime, the Sooners were 4 of 5 from the field. The only miss came on that last-second heave from Elijah Harkless. The biggest thing is, though, they had 2 crucial turnovers, which led to Texas baskets. OU seems to get onto a lead in overtime, and the offense just seems to slow down from there. And now they're 0-3 in overtime games this season, losing that Big 12 Big East challenge to Butler, TCU on the road, and now Texas at home.
Right. I see what you're saying with the 2 late turnovers. I mean, obviously those were critical in the game, but in my opinion, the turnover problem is getting better. Look, it's tough to find positive in a team that has lost 4 out of their last 5, but recently turnovers haven't been that big of a deal, right? Against Texas, they only had 12. Kansas only had 9. Kansas is one of the better teams in the country, right? The sharp decline is a step in the right direction, leading towards tournament time. Unfortunately, turnovers cannot overturn, see what I did there? The fact that they shot 5 for 23 from deep. Unfortunately, like I said, you can't shoot 5 for 23 from deep, but I agree with the fact that Moser said that he said their team is playing very well. They're playing good basketball, but they just need these shots to fall. Luckily, I think they're going to turn it around. I think they'll be in good shape, keep it simple, play good basketball, and stick to what they know.
I think you guys brought up really good points. OU's been falling short on the scoreboard in way too many close games this season, including against Texas. So what I took from this game was the horrendous shooting performance from the Sooners. OU had 51 field goal attempts against Texas, 23 of them from the three-point range. But sadly, the Sooners only made 5 of their three-point shots, which makes a whopping 21.7%. That is terrible. In the first game against Texas this season, the Sooners were just as bad, with the 3-ball only making 1 of 13 attempts. Considering Oklahoma has lost 8 of its last 10 games, 4 of those losses by 3 points or less, it sounds like Captain Obvious here, but these shots, it matters. So I think OU has been playing better, but Stone, you said it, these shots really do matter.
Another thing, like you said, Addie, 5 of 23, like you guys both touched on, 5 for 23 from deep. It's not like they were taking terrible shots. Like the game in Austin, they were having to force up shots. Chris Beard's team was locking them down, suffocating them, forcing them to take bad shots. But they had plenty of open looks. They just weren't falling. And despite shooting 5 of 23, they were still able to stay in the game with a top 20 team. I think that says a lot for the potential that Porter Moser's team has. But like I said, they just cannot finish.
Yeah, in the first half of the game, the Sooners were shooting at just 30.8% from the field. So, I mean, it's getting close to do or die time for the Sooners, and I think this game was a wasted opportunity.
Right, it's definitely a bump in the road leading up to tournament time. I mean, these are games you have to win in conference where you have the advantage, but once again, fall on.
Yeah, so you guys, at this point, it's not really a debate on if Porter can make this OU program really good, but how long will it take? Could we see them in the Sweet 16 this year, next year, or never?
I feel like next year is a way better chance for OU than this year. Obviously, when it comes to tournament time, anything can happen. Great teams can play poor, poor teams can play great. But the biggest thing next year, and moving on for Porter Moser and OU, is getting the players he wants. Now, he has 2 hard commits for the 2022 recruiting cycle, a 6'4" point guard, 4-star in Milos Uzan, and a 6'6" shooting guard in Otega Owe. I think a big thing for Porter Moser and his team is getting guys that he will actually use. As you can see at Loyola, he loves to use his bigs, as you can see in the OU offense, and he loves big physical guards, and I think that's exactly what Porter Moser is going to be looking for going forward, and that's what could lead this team to the Sweet 16 next year.
I'm not sure if I'm as positive as you are getting there next year. I think this is more of a realistic timeline in 2 years. Having 4 of your top 4 of your top bucket getters being seniors in a barely over 500 record isn't really a good recipe for success going forward into next year. But I could see Bijan Cortez and CJ Nolan developing the core pieces on this roster. Also, OU has the talent, it's got the structure, and I think this team can be a competitor in 2 years' time, but I'm not sure if it could be next year. We'll have to see how Mosier can get those recruits, as you mentioned earlier, and use the portal to not only climb the ranks for the tournament time, but also compete in the Big 12 going forward.
It's interesting you mentioned the portal because he did hit the portal hard this year, getting Shagwa and Goldwire. Say what you want about Goldwire. I think he's been a very good addition to this team, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Absolutely. You see, to me, Porter Moser has given OU's basketball program, something really fresh. And I mean, I think they can hang in these tough games, but this season's team has been full of new faces, including the head coach, Porter Moser. With that being said, it's obvious that he will make the team better, but it's just not going to be this year. I think, like you said, Stone, it's going to be next year. Lon Kruger was at Oklahoma for a decade, 10 years. Porter needs his time to make his mark on this program, and he's already getting the students involved and giving Sooner Nation hope for the tournament in just his first year coaching. The Big 12 is the hardest basketball conference. So, however, potential can only get you so far. They can either rack up wins or they hit losing streaks, which makes room for other teams to come in the tournament. And I just don't see OU making a deep run this year, but I think through recruits, like you said, Stone, I think he can take this season and really build on it, see what they need to work on, like shooting, rebounds, turnovers, and next season show up as a contender in the Big 12.
Yeah, I can agree. It sounds like between you all, it seems like they have the sauce, but not really the recipe. So hopefully we can see something this year. That will be new, or maybe next year. But when Game Day returns, all analysts will break down the upcoming matchup between the Cyclones and the Sooners. You won't want to miss it. Stick around. Now, there are 3 freshman standouts on the roster among Cortez, Nolan, and Mason. Which one excites you the most?
The freshman that excites me the most is the guy that gets the least amount of minutes, and that's Alston Mason. Mason is just as shifty as Bijan Cortez, but he simply does not get the same amount of minutes as him. The most minutes Alston Mason has played in a conference game is 10 minutes at Allen Fieldhouse. It's a tough ask for anyone to play in one of the toughest environments in college basketball. When you're asking a true freshman to come in and contribute the most he has all year in conference, that's a very tough thing to ask. He's very shifty the way that he moves, and he can pass the ball. I think he just needs to get some more minutes.
All right. Typically it takes some time to get used to the D1 level, especially in the Big 12. But CJ Nolan has taken it all in stride. Nolan has a triple slash line of 57, 41, and 80 as a freshman. As his time in Norman continues, I can only see him building on this season, taking over the primary scoring role and ball handling duties in this Mosier offense. As of right now, with Groves, Goldwire, and Gibson and Harkless all being seniors, somebody has to fill that role, right? So I can't think of a better candidate. And Bill Russell said in the movie Uncle Drew, this game has always been, always will be about buckets. And CJ is the best young bucket getter on this Sooner squad.
You know, I really like that you said CJ because we're actually from the same exact hometown.
What?
And so I actually kind of feel bad, but I'm going to go with Bijan Cortez. He's only a freshman, but he has shown the importance of depth on a roster. I think the best way to show that was his performance against Iowa State last month. Cortez came off the bench with only 9 minutes remaining in the game and just brought a different energy to the court. OU took that game 79-66 against the then-ranked 11 Iowa State, and I'd say Cortez was a factor in the end because he absolutely picked apart Iowa State's defense. Their defense was so focused on Bijan that it created more space for Mo Gibson to score 8 of his 20 points in the game with Cortez on the floor. Bijan only scored 4 points, but he had 5 assists with 3 rebounds of his own. And what I really like about Bijan is that he's a team player. He's not so much focused on shooting the ball and getting all those points. He just wants to help out his teammates and do the best for his team. So I think as Cortez gets more experience, he can really be a leader on this team. And so I'm super excited to see him progress as a player under Porter Moser's leadership.
And like you said, he's a great team player, but I think he's a lot more of a pass-first guy, but he needs to shoot the ball more. Of these three freshmen we've mentioned, Cortez gets the most minutes, but he simply does not shoot the ball. That's his biggest flaw so far, and that's why I think guys like Nolan and Mason need to get more minutes over Bijan.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, Nolan he brings the ability to be a sharpshooter on this floor. It's one thing that this team is missing, and that's why I think he should get more minutes than the guys that you mentioned above. Now, I think both of these players are great. I think they're both great going forward. I really like the promising future that this team has, but I'm rocking with CJ Nolan right now.
Yeah, I'm really excited that we all three have different freshmen that can potentially lead this team as more guys go out and graduate. But I'm just sticking with Bijan because, yeah, he might be a pass-first guy. Maybe he's not the best shooter, but if he can pass those guys that can shoot, then why would you not want him on your team?
It must be simply because they shot 5 of 23 from 3.
Yeah.
But, if you can get the looks, then if they go in, then it's great. But, I think Porter Moser and this OU offense, they continue to have to go back to the drawing board because they cannot get a consistent game plan, game in and game out.
All right, now the Sooners are taking the court Saturday against the Iowa State Cyclones, who beat TCU last week on the road and will be back in their own Hilton Coliseum. Will the Sooners be able to pull off a win on the road?
I think the biggest thing for Oklahoma going into this game is the ability of their guards. The guards are the strength of this OU basketball team, and like we've said, like they have shown, they have been able to shoot the ball, unlike last game. But the biggest thing for them is going to be able to shoot the ball from deep and play some transition offense. Oklahoma typically tries to slow the game down. I feel like try to get out of their groove a bit, but I think they just need to keep the tempo up and keep up that physical defense.
We talked about this earlier in the day about their playing in transition, playing more up pace. I'm going to take the optimistic route, and I'm going to expect another dynamic offense performance. I'm expecting the offense to go through Goldwire. I know Porter Moser mentioned that in the meetings that they had earlier in the week, and he should be the primary facilitator for this offense. On defense, the main focus has to be Isaiah Brockington. He's their best scorer. The offense basically runs through him, whether like it or not. I mean, I don't know what his usage rate is, probably like 35%, something ridiculous. Every time I watch him, he's got the ball in his hands. He's got the ability to put up points in bunches and fill up the stat sheet. The offense starts and stops with him.
Yeah, here's what I think. I think this weekend, Iowa State is just going to keep on rolling. The Cyclones were on a 4-game losing streak until Tuesday night against TCU, where Iowa State finally got that much-needed win that they seriously needed. And Iowa State now has its 8th Quad 1 win of the season, which makes them tied for 2nd in the nation. And let me remind you that Iowa State was not very good last season. And fast forward to this season, the Cyclones were unbeaten in their first 12 games and even climbed the rankings a bit. Now, they did fall back, I will admit that, but the Big 12 is tough. It's a hard conference to be in. I like watching Iowa State because they bring energy, excitement, aggressiveness, and I think who's going to be a real weapon for them is Isaiah Brockington. Brockington against TCU, he had 20 points, and that was his 10th 20-point game of the season. He's really good. And putting that all into perspective, Iowa State is 12-4 at Hilton Coliseum. OU is 2-6 on the road. So I think OU did pull out the win at the LNC last time they were here, but they have to take a road trip.
I think it's going to be hard to keep chugging along when they just broke a 4-game losing streak.
I mean, you said they weren't very good last year. You know who's also not good this year? Iowa State once again. I mean, they lost by like 15 last game. It wasn't a good outing. OU lit them up. They think they shot, like 60% last time they played? It was unbelievable. I don't know. I don't know where your confidence is coming from, but I could admire it.
It's do or die time.
So it's so for OU.
Exactly. They're going to be fighting to make the tournament. Their determination is going to be there. I think Iowa State is going to give OU a run for their money.
Determination don't allow like 15 more points than they had last time, but it's okay.
Now we're going to take a quick timeout, but when we come back, our analysts will be picking this weekend's Big 12 matchups. Now it is time for Pick'em Big 12 Saturday, where the analysts will break down all of the Big 12 matchups happening this weekend. So our first two teams are Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Will the Wildcats or Pokes be taking the dub?
You know, this is another non-interesting game in the Big 12. Unfortunately, I believe both of these teams are in the bottom 3 or 4. But what will make it interesting is the guard duo of Nigel Pack and Mark Smith from Kansas State. Coming off of their win against West Virginia, Pack had 13 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. And Smith had 17 points and 10 rebounds. But let's not forget about Marquise Noel, 5'8" represent, finally putting up D1 numbers. He had 21 points and 3 steals. These guards put up 51 on West Virginia. I think that's just too much for the Pokes.
Gotta love you sticking up for the short kings out there, 5'8", gotta love it. But guys, don't look now. The Wildcats have won their last 2 games. Ooh. And another movie quote for you from Major League 2. If K-State wins on Saturday, that will be 3 wins. That is called a winning streak. It has happened before, and it could happen again. No, but in all seriousness, I think they go into Galagaiba. I think they sweep the series. They won 4 out of their last 5. They're a hot team, hot commodity in the Big 12. Look at K-State go. And one of those was including the Cowboys. I think, like what you said with Nigel Pack, is a key factor here. And if they can get him open looks, it should be a long night for the Cowboys.
You know, I'm taking Oklahoma State. OSU has held its opponents to 60 points or less in all 5 of its conference wins. OSU, they can't make the tournament this year because of reasons we won't talk about, but they can help ensure that other teams can't make the tournament. So I think they're going to show up with aggressiveness, and I think they're going to take down K-State and kind of bring them down a bit.
I misspoke earlier. K-State, I believe they're actually 4th in the Big 12 right now. Despite their 14-11 record, it's not very good, but in the Big 12, it's all about conference play.
Okay.
I agree.
Now, next up, going head-to-head are the Kansas Jayhawks and the Mountaineers from West Virginia. Who you got?
I got Kansas. Kansas is coming off of a throttle when they played in Lawrence. Jalen Wilson, David McCormick, and Ochai Agbaji put up 62 of the team's 85 points. Bob Huggins is known for having a great defense. It isn't that great. I think Kansas wins big.
I'm with you there. Last time I bet on Press Virginia, but I will not fall under that trap. Again, see what I did there? Look, Kansas has one of the premier guards in Ochai Agbaji, and I could see him leading the Jayhawks to a win over West Virginia and build on that great resume leading into tournament time.
Absolutely. I think it's very easy. Kansas will win this game. When they played OSU, all of Kansas starters, they scored double digits. So I think it'll be the same story. I'm going with Kansas.
Okay, now TCU and Baylor are taking the court. Who's walking away with the W?
I think Baylor's going to come away with this win. You know, the top of the Big 12 is very competitive with Texas Tech, Kansas, and Baylor. But I do think that Baylor's going to walk away with this one. They're coming off of a tough loss at Texas Tech. But Tech is undefeated at home this season. That's going to happen. I think TCU is still very overrated. I think Baylor's going to win pretty handily in this one.
All right. To me, everything in this matchup leads towards Baylor. They have a better, and hang with me here. Points per game, points allowed, field goal percentage, assist numbers, steal, and most importantly, talent. I'm not going to overthink this one, guys. Give me the Bears.
I have to agree with both of you, Stone. You said it. I seriously think that Baylor's going to win this game. TCU is overrated, so got to go with the Bears.
Now, next up are the Red Raiders and the Texas Longhorns. Will Texas be able to stay alive after that close overtime win against the Sooners?
They cannot. Texas is one of the most inconsistent teams in the Big 12. The 20 next to their name does not show it, but they haven't won back-to-back games since January, and it's mid-February right now. In the heat of conference play, you have to be consistent this time of year, and that's what got them knocked out of the tournament last year. Texas Tech is the hottest team in the Big 12 right now, and I think that's going to continue in Austin.
All right, last time out, Tech blew the doors off of Texas, but I can't see them having another poor shooting performance again. This time at home, I think they'll play out much differently, in my opinion, since that game, they have wins over Kansas, Iowa State, and the University of Oklahoma. I think they're running a pretty good streak right now and playing a good brand of basketball. I think Texas is going to take this one.
I'm going to take the Red Raiders on this one. You know, Texas Tech, they beat Baylor for the second time. I mean, it was a sweep. So I think that Tech has beaten Texas before, and I think they'll do it again. So I'm going to take Texas Tech.
Okay, now last but not least, Oklahoma and Iowa State. Will the Sooners or Cyclones come out in this matchup?
It's a make-or-break game for Oklahoma, and I think they're going to make it just a little bit longer. They need a couple more wins to solidify their ticket for March, but I think Oklahoma can get it done. Last game versus Iowa State in January, OU shot 58% from 3 and 61% from the field. Like you guys have said, Isaiah Brockington is a great player, but he's just too much for the guard play of OU.
Right. I know we've all been fairly critical over OU, including myself, but I think the Sooners have a very good chance to take this win against the Cyclones. Once again, I expect Tanner Groves and Goldwire to take advantage down low against that porous and shaky Cyclone interior defense.
My heart wants to say Oklahoma, but my head is saying Iowa State, and I'm going to go with my head here. OU is very inconsistent. They don't do well when they're not at the LNC, so I think Isaiah Brockington is going to be too much for OU to handle, actually, so I'm going to go with Iowa State.
Okay, well, that is all we have for you this evening for Men's Game Day U Hoops. Be sure to tune in to the women's segments to keep up with the Lady Sooners and follow Game Day U on all of our socials. For Stone Webber, Jimmy Wicks, and Addie Crawford, I'm Mecca Thompson. Good night.